Hello everyone and welcome to my fourth devlog for my indie game Pantan. It's been a while since I've made one of these videos, but I just couldn't find the time to make a devlog. Enjoy. Since I was already knee-deep in the development process, I wanted to create a menu system and settings tab along with a sound system before the game got way too complicated to add something like that. Changes in the settings tab can be seen as soon as you change anything. You don't have to accept the changes to see them. Saving is also possible now. I wanted to make the entire system as simple as possible, so I've actually created an autosave system so the player never has to worry about saving. Since I wanted simplicity and ease of use, I made the menus work with mouse and keyboard. I've even added a small Easter egg that will probably trigger a lot of people, but I just find it too funny. When you decide to quit the game from the main menu, the yes button will avoid your mouse. You can still use the keyboard to quit the game, but I just find it hilarious. The sound system is made in a way that it holds all the sounds and functions needed to play sound. I just have to call a single function and give it the ID of the sound I want it to play, and sometimes an optional parameter that affects the volume, and it will play the sought-after sound. This way I didn't have to write a lot of code to get sound to work. Sound is also affected by the fade-out and fade-in effects that occur when loading scenes. The player can now turn into two clones that do opposite things. If one is walking, the other is running, and vice versa. Same goes for the direction they're moving towards. This mechanic will be needed for another mechanic which isn't finished yet. Currently I'm activating the mechanic via keybind, but it will be changed soon. This will actually be the death mechanic. Once you die, you will spawn two clones at random positions, and if you manage to get the clones to touch, you will respawn at the point where they merged. I upgraded the controller a lot. It handles stairs a lot smoother now. I've added a feature that was actually quite easy to add, but I simply forgot until I actually noticed it was missing. Now when you jump and hit something, the character will stop ascending and start falling down due to gravity. I've upgraded the ground system a lot. I've added waves to the dry sand, and I made all the shaders a bit better. I've upgraded the umbrella mechanics so they're a bit more intuitive and easier to use, and I've added a speed relative zoom to the camera. That way when you start sliding around, the camera will zoom out, making the entire mechanic a lot easier to use. I've also added a particle effect to the character while he's moving through the sand. It's very subtle, and I'm probably gonna change the effect quite a bit later in the development process, but it works as intended, and I detect every footstep individually so changes won't be hard. The grass has been upgraded too. The deformation of the grass is a lot better and more stable now. It looks better as well. When I added my sound system, I've noticed a lot of issues with the ground system when the character was moving on objects that are slightly above the ground surface. It's taken me quite a bit of work to get it working properly, but eventually it worked out, and now when you're running on an object that's above ground level, it's gonna play the appropriate sound and won't trigger the deformation effects no matter how close the surface of the object is to the sand surface. I've used inverse kinematics a lot in this game, but I decided to add minor details that add to the immersion of the game. You can now toggle walking and the character will now turn his head towards the direction the player is inputting, and if he's walking close enough to something he will place his hand onto that object. This has allowed me to make all sorts of levers and buttons that the character can interact with. He will do so automatically if it's within his reach, so you don't have to press any buttons, you just have to get your character close enough and he will start pressing a button or pushing a lever. Since I never hard code systems like that, I've ended up making platforms that can do the exact same thing. They can move and rotate in any direction and affect the movement of the character while he's standing on them. The old controller worked with platforms that were moving vertically and horizontally. It even worked with platforms that were rotating, but there was an issue. Even though he was moving with the rotating platforms, he did not rotate. Let's say if he was facing north and the platform did a 180 rotation, even though he changed position correctly, he was still facing north. So I addressed that. The code itself was pretty simple, but the math that went into it was a mess, and I'm glad I finally got it working because it drove me insane. Now it works with platforms that move and rotate in any direction. Since I've already upgraded the controller, I decided to make better platforms. First, I created a hanging bridge by creating a custom joint system. Using Unity joints was not a viable option since they're extremely hard to set up, and in all the years I've been using Unity I never managed to create something that actually worked as I wanted it to work with them. The Unity system has another issue where it does not support two-way joints, so it was impossible to create a hanging bridge with them. My system allows for an arbitrary number of connections, so I can create quite a bit of things with this system, and it propagates waves. The connection can also break if the applied force gets too big. The movement of these segments also affect the movement of the character. Creating ropes was extremely easy with this system. Even though they are pretty useless by themselves, they will be a great tool for simulating vines and other similar things throughout the game. The player character can also grab them and move them around using the IK system I've mentioned earlier. Even though they are useless by themselves, I can use the exact same ropes to hold objects. Like this platform, for example. Ropes can also break just like the bridge, which adds a lot of possibilities to the game. That's all for this devlog. I was actually planning to give you guys a playable demo along with this devlog, but I just didn't find the time to finish some of the mechanics and make a tutorial. I'm gonna have a lot of free time again, so I hope I'll be able to create the next devlog in about 10 days just like I was doing with the first 3, and maybe it will have the playable demo I was hoping to give you. Anyway, thanks for watching. Like, subscribe and feel free to give any ideas or opinions in the comment section. Cheers.